All right, welcome back to a special edition of Corona Geek, where we talk all about cross-platform app development using Corona SDK. I'm your host, Charles McKeever, and today I'm joining you from the office of Perk.com in beautiful downtown Austin, Texas. Joining me is Roj Niyogi, founder and president of Perk.com. So thanks for joining me, Raj. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming over here. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Hey, so Perk.com purchased Corona Labs.
That's right.
It kind of caught the community by surprise and has raised a lot of questions. So we're hoping to get some answers today from you.
Let's do it.
And we've got questions, everything from who the heck is Perk
Okay.
to what's the
Fair
future of Corona.
Yep.
Okay.
Makes sense.
So let's jump right into it. Okay. Who the heck is Perk?
So if you think about Perk over the years, we started off as if you go look in the Google, if you just Google search Perk, you'll actually see a whole bunch of stuff about how we worked on a desktop web browser that rewarded you for using it. You'd actually search the web and earn points, shop the web and earn points, and even fill out offers and earn points. And all this is all built in a desktop web browser that we created for Mac and Windows using the Chromium platform. So that was a couple of years ago. And then we actually made the traversal into mobile and did the same thing. We built a mobile app, a mobile web browser now. So it was a desktop browser to a mobile browser, and it did the same things. You would search the web and earn points. We had a kind of a sort of relationship with Yahoo that allowed us to do that. You incentivize web searches, and had a whole set of relationships with e-commerce retailers that where if you shop them, you'd earn points. And ultimately found out that was a complete failure. It was a giant failure. And so what we had to do was think about, okay, well, what do we have to do next? And just in true iteration fashion, found out that the best thing to do would be to unbundle these apps. And as you're seeing this trend in, with Facebook, having a messenger app and a social networking app and a Moments app, apps are typically single purpose. You typically look at an app and say, oh, what does that app do? Oh, it's a messaging app, or it's a social network app, or it's a news app, or it's a game where you do this. The more things you pack into the app, if it's just overblown, the value proposition goes away. So we naturally took Perk and then unbundled it into a bunch of little apps, right? So we have an app where you can watch videos and earn points. We have a search and win app where you can actually search the web and earn points for doing that. That actually took off, because once you actually created a much simpler value proposition to users, they finally got it. They finally understand, okay, I have to do this one thing and I earn points. The truth is, Perk can't build every app under the sun. It's virtually impossible for us to take Perk points and try to go out there and blanket the entire universe of apps. So the natural next step was for us to go build Appsaholic. Appsaholic was actually a monetization solution for developers that basically build any app and say, hey, add some rewards to your app. And ultimately, when we think of Corona, we think of that extending the landscape and saying, well, now we can get developers out there as they're creating apps, not as they already have apps, and give them tools to put some Perk in there, sooner and be part of the process.
Okay, good. I'm glad you got to that point, because let's talk about that for a moment. One of the questions that people have been asking is, why is Perk so excited about Corona? Why did they go to the lengths of actually buying Corona Labs from?
That's a great question, Charles. The answer was multifold. First of all, it's just cool to own a platform. All right, there's just no other way around it. It's fundamentally, and it's even cooler when you have a platform that has a vibrant community of developers that actually build apps and build games, and are passionate about game development. And it's a testament to the fact that and we're doing it ourselves. We actually use Corona ourselves, right? And it's kind of serendipitous thing, because when the opportunity to look at Corona and acquire Corona came up, it was serendipitous with another story where we actually heard from a developer who said to us, hey, you know what? You guys are building this game that's actually a 2D game using Unity. Why are you doing that? You should be using Corona for something like this. And at the time, we had no idea what he was talking about. We're like, what's Corona? And we actually said, and then actually he took the liberty over the weekend to construct a game that had taken months for us to build, and did it within days. And this is someone who actually has experience in Corona, right? And so he was able to do that really quickly. And that was kind of the writing on the wall that said, wow, we just are just using the wrong tool set here.
It's interesting that you say that because we have heard that story over and over again, right? So that somebody used tool X, they spent 6 months or so trying to build something. Someone said, hey, why don't you use Corona? And in a weekend or a week, right? They're like, hey, we have something that's a minimal viable product that we could go with, right? And that's always kind of amazed people. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the idea. So if you think about us learning that for ourselves and then appreciating Corona for what's possible, we have the firsthand experience of what it takes to get the aha moment to more developers out there. And that's our goal, is to actually get people out there who are thinking of going to game development, who are using default tools of the trade to get that aha moment to them as well, and have them think about Corona as well. I think there's a big opportunity there.
Well, okay, so that being said, the one thing that question that comes up from the community is, okay, that sounds good, but Fuse was an ad company, Perk's an ad company. What's going to be different this time?
The reality is that we use advertising to monetize our apps. When we started building Perk apps, we call it our own and operated Perk apps that monetize with advertising, right? And if we're an ad company, then any publisher out there that puts ads in their app is an ad company. But the truth is that advertising is a component of the product, is a component of who we are. In the same respect that Facebook and Google have an ad tech business attached to their primary product, Google has a search engine, they have advertising, they have AdWords for advertisers to latch on and do some interesting things with. Facebook has the same concept with their ads program. They bought LiveRail, but at the end of the day, when you think of Facebook, you think of them as a social network. So I can see how there would be a kind of a conception that Perk is an ad company. The reality is that we're not. We're actually a collection of things. The unification of a concept that people's time on their phones is a valuable asset. Advertisers are willing to go out and pay handsomely for the attention when someone's actually choosing one app versus another app. And publishers need to do more to stand out between one app with their app versus another app that a consumer can use by doing something interesting. At some point, as I mentioned earlier, there are tons of calculator apps, there's tons of utility apps, and if there's a Candy Crush, there's 5 other clones out there, and there's tons of bubble shooters. What are you doing to be different? So there's an opportunity to kind of solve for a more interesting problem, which is how do you make the equation of what's interesting for developers, for publishers, for advertisers, and consumers all fit together and appropriately coexist?
Okay. So the other question that comes up, and this is really addressed sort of in Walter's blog post on the Corona Labs blog, but I want to kind of get your take on it. Walter is the founder of Corona, the previous CEO. He's sort of the poster child. He's really well known in the community and stuff like that. So what does Walter's taking a step back or taking an advisory role, what does that really mean to the community, and what does it mean to you?
Walter stepping back, in my mind, in one respect means absolutely nothing in terms of what happens next. I think that Walter has done an amazing job taking and shepherding the platform to where it is today. If you think about it's a mature platform. There's lots of stuff happening. There's lots of stuff that you can build. Top apps have been built on the Corona platform, which means that when you think about the work that he's done over the years, he's actually taken it to what I think is a successful platform, right? A successful platform in terms of the community developers, apps that have built on that can be built on the platform, plugins, in my mind, the beginnings of a thriving plugin ecosystem. And I think both of us, when we first talked, I think a couple of months ago, both shared a strong vision of what the future for Corona could be. So as it might seem that he has just disappeared or vanished into the ether, he's very much an advisor to the company, and had been advising folks in the company in a more active way for the last 8 to 10 months. So the Walter that was actually furiously coding years and years ago and actually working on pieces of the business was actually coaching and saying, let me see if this baton handoff internally to the engineers that are making the product work, can it work? Can it work with me sitting here and watching folks work on the platform than if I'm actually coding on the platform myself? I think he saw success there, and I think that has had an impact. And in terms of really helping his own confidence in what would happen if I actually kind of retreated into the darkness and watched the platform actually continue to evolve. And it's worked. I think it's actually working just fine. This isn't a startup that he's been working on for 12 months.
Right.
This is something he's worked on for 6 years, right? 6 years of time into the platform. And I think the entire community and myself should really appreciate and kind of give him a round of applause virtually for what he's done to take this platform to where it is and actually enable developers to do some interesting things in terms of form of livelihood around building games on this platform that was a vision and something he created. So to answer your question in kind of more succinct terms, Walter is still around. We talk very often. He's participating in the forums. You saw a post for his on the forums, but I'm talking to him regularly. I talked to him the day before yesterday. I'm gonna meet him next week when I'm in the Palo Alto office meeting the Corona team again, and I think. And he's already forwarding emails from folks that are interested in teaming up with Corona on various initiatives.
Yeah, I'm not really sure when he sleeps.
Yeah, that's I wonder that, right? And I am curious, and I'm excited about what he does next. But as far as the development community and how they feel about Walter and what he's going to do next, he's very much with the community. He's very much with talking to us on a regular basis, and will be helpful into the future. So he's not gone. He's here. There's nothing to worry about. Life goes on. We're all good.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about Perk then. Perk is a publicly traded company. What does that mean?
That's a good question. So it's a good thing in terms of what it can mean for what the future looks like. And shareholders and investors expect big things. They expect big ideas. They invest in the future.
Okay, so let's talk about what that means in terms of Corona. What happens if 6 months from now Corona is not profitable? There's been some banter about that.
That's a fair question. Fair question by anybody who's asking that. But I had to go back to the whole notion that Perk uses Corona, right? So for us, there's a twofold. It actually matters that there's a twofold reason in terms of why Corona was purchased, right? On the one hand, there's a platform opportunity. There's the idea that there's a platform and we want to grow the platform and get it really large. But a precursor to that, the responsible thing to do is to say, hey, look, this platform is good for us. It's good for what we can do with the platform. So the way I like to think about it is, if there were no developers tomorrow and we were making thousands and thousands of dollars a day off the platform, an investor would expect, almost a demand, that we have a way to protect our business by having the platform and doing everything we can do to really to protect the chance of success or protect your business. And they would say it's the smartest decision that you could make to own the platform that generates the revenue for the company. My job in the future is to really shepherd and work on getting that platform, taking that platform to the next level. That's my goal, my personal goal. And the company's large, but I've taken it upon myself to really work on this into the future. And again, referring back to Walter, relying and working and bugging Walter where I can on behalf of everybody else to make sure that he can help where I need his help to make this possible.
Okay, you just mentioned team size.
Yeah.
So how big is Perk? How are things kind of split up? How many offices are there? That kind of stuff.
Right. So the Perk team currently it's growing fast. At last count, if I remember correctly, and I say this is a pretty wide range. There's 160 to 180 people. All right, so 160 to 180 people right now, and we're spread across a few offices. We've got our office and headquarters here in Austin, Texas, which hook 'em, right? Which is headquarters for us, and we love calling this home. We also have a big office in our Bangalore in our Bangalore office in India, which was the second office we launched. And so we have about 80 people in that office today. And the office is a very multifaceted office. It's not a outsourcing department. I actually flew out there and we had an office. We had people working from us before we had an actual office space there. And now we have, an entire building of people that are working from doing everything from content management to design to programming, back-end PHP, web programming, front-end programming, iOS. We actually have Unity developers, we have CocoaS 2DX developers, and most recently and most excitingly, we have Corona developers. We have, I think, about a half dozen programmers right now that are working on these games that the product managers are designing and working with to really kind of take them to completion and launch them.
I really want to stop and re-emphasize what you said earlier. So for anybody who may have missed that, is that you just said you have Cocos 2D, you have Unity, developers and all that stuff like that, but still you felt that it was a business decision, a good solid business decision to own a platform that you can use to build out the business.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a very important point.
I'd also reiterate the fact that we are now converting a lot of our developers that were once using Coco S2DX and Unity and native code to start using Corona, to standardize on Corona as our primary platform. Further to that, when I think about Corona, it has proven its, and we're actually going to port our games that were built in other platforms over to Corona because it makes sense, right? It makes a lot of sense. A lot of modularity, lots of reasons why it makes sense. So there's lots of reasons, there's lots of dimensions to the acquisition that may not be apparent to everybody, but I think it is important mentioning, and I appreciate you doing that. Yeah.
I think it's important for the community to put their business hat on, right? And think about, okay, if I were Perk, that's not, and some of these questions come out of that, right? Like, what happens if it doesn't make money? But when you frame it in that respect, that look, it's a business decision. This is a long-term play. This is what we're about. We're not gonna switch teams tomorrow, right? That kind of thing. So I think that's important. Okay, so let's talk about Fuse. Moving forward. We're talking about the future. We're talking about moving forward, things like that. Fuse plugin. What happens to it? What happens to it now?
It sticks around. It's not going to go anywhere.
Okay.
John Walsh, who is the CEO of Fuse Powered, and I have been talking. We talked yesterday, and he committed to the Fuse plugin being an important part of their business, and we were also supportive of the fact that developers who have spent the time and energy to put that in, it makes sense. It makes good sense for the Fuse plugin to be available to developers. So as far as I'm concerned, the plugin is around. I don't think it changes. I think there've already been successful stories of developers that have seen the revenue kind of be the way the expectations were met, and they're making money with the plugin, and that's a good thing. And we should be supportive of the fact that if developers are able to earn revenue from their apps with a solution and it works, well, why stop it?
Okay, so that's good. So let's talk about third-party plugins.
Sure.
Right? Third-party ad providers, are those going to be allowed?
Yes.
Okay. That's pretty simple.
Yes. I think the important thing is, again, developers are looking for an extensive platform that does as much as they need it to do, and they're making decisions before they build an app, as they're building their app, as they're maintaining their app, as they see success with their app. And I think plugins allow more opportunities than less. And in fact, one of our commitments is to go build more plugins and help and work with other companies in the mobile space to get their SDKs turned into plugins and make them available to developers in the community.
Okay. And so that goes right along with the question of, will developers be forced to use Perk? Right, it's a kind of a one and the same question.
And to answer that question as simply as the last one, no, they're not forced to use Perk at all. I think that the idea here is it's largely karma driven, that says, hey, look, first of all, as a platform, do what you think is best in terms of how you want to operate your mobile app. Our thought is that at some point, and we're excited about a lot of what we can bring to the table in the future, that Perk can actually help you with user acquisition at some point. I think user acquisition is a big deal. You build an app, you spend 2 years or 2 months building an app, depending on the extent and the complexity of the app, and now you release it and you wonder where those users are going to come from. Now, big companies have big budgets and they spend money on advertising and user acquisition, but sometimes developers don't have that, and so we can actually help with the right magical components in the mobile apps drive users to your apps, right? Because if they're into, and I'll just go back into the whole Perk story, if they're earning Perk points in an app, and they're trying to get their Amazon gift card, and they're tired of unlocking their phone or playing a quiz app, they're like, where else can I go? What else can I do to earn these perk points? And so there's this idea that at some point, for some developers, they'll try it out and they'll see how it does for them, and we're glad to accept and work with developers that want to do that.
Okay. So branding wise, right? Are we talking about Perk ads? Are we talking about Corona ads?
That's
I mean,
a great
in your blog post, you said something about Corona ads.
That's a great question. Corona ads is our idea of, a graceful closest thing to a one-stop solution, one click, press here, get this code, rather put this one line at the top of your code, and then kind of show that you want to tell your program you want to show an ad here, and it just working. It's not for everybody, and I don't think that we think that Corona ads is the only way someone should be able to monetize their app. So it's going to largely coexist with other plugins that are out there. I think there are varying shades and varying kind of phases and stages that a developer might be in. Indie developers to developers that have seen success and they're now going to talk to other monetization partners and try to get the highest yield CPMs, things like that. And we want to be able to have a solution for everybody, right?
Okay, so let's talk about this one. This one's kind of it sounds like a weird question, but will Corona ever be open sourced?
It's a legitimate question whether Corona could be open sourced, and the answer is it's not out of the question, right? I think there's always a possibility that and I think we see a lot of trends with Swift just going open source. Swift just yesterday is now open source. And I think the idea, the claim has always been, if I open source my product, suddenly everyone's going to start using it, right? It's not necessarily true, right? I mean, I think there's always a question of, and I think there's an idea that if it's almost like it's an insurance policy on the possibility that if something went out of business, that the open source community would take it and do something with it. But in this case, because we use the product ourselves. So there's definitely a fresh new possibility that it can happen. So it's not out of the question.
Let's kind of wrap things up here. In your blog post you had mentioned an asset store, CoronaCon, things like that. Freestyle for us. Tell us your vision.
Well, I think I really want Corona to be not just. I think it should be a default for if you're not building a shoot 'em up FIFA soccer or a FIFA soccer type 3D kind of game. If you're not doing that, there's no reason to not use Corona. Is the idea, and my idea of success out of Corona is, outside of us using it and continuing to do what we're doing with Corona at Perk, is to get it to be part of the conversation of any developer when they're considering a platform. And I know that you look at other platforms like Unity that are considered by default, and it's by default to a fault, meaning it's not supposed to be used in some cases. We were guilty of that ourselves as a company. We used Unity because it seemed like the right thing to do, because we were ill-informed. And we didn't go out there looking at anything else, because if you do, you open up Pandora's box of all these other platforms. So there's this deep sense of mission around getting the word out there and talking to more developers. There's a developer community in all parts of the world, from India to South America to Europe to Australia and Korea, that all are already using Corona in certain ways, and that's just the beginning. So for us, and 2016 for us is going to be a interesting year, because we're actually going to go take Corona with us to all the conferences that we're going to be attending, from Game Developer Conference to Casual Connect to Apps World to Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. So there's a lot of things we're going to do to go spread the gospel of what Corona can do. And the reason why, again, it works is because we're going to be at the conferences anyhow. So now Corona is represented at the conferences. So that's one of the really big things that I think is important, is for us to go out there and get Corona out there in a big way.
All right, Raj, well, I appreciate it. I really appreciate you spending some time with us, answering these questions. These questions have come from the community. You guys have asked these things. So if you have other questions for Raj, I would encourage you to go to coronalabs.com, click on the resources there, go to the forum. You can ask him any questions you want directly. He's already been there answering people's questions. So basically, go to coronalabs.com, Download Corona SDK, give it a try for yourself. If you have any questions about what's going on or where we're headed, hit the forums and ask those questions, and Raj will be happy to give you some feedback. All right? I appreciate it, Raj.
Thank you very much,
All right.
Charles.
You guys take care. We'll talk to you next time.